We're going to bring in an expert to go deeper into this conversation. Paulo Spadoni, professor, University of Florida in Gainesville. Welcome to BizAsiaAmerica. Michael was talking a lot about some of the changes and some of the challenges. I want to get your perspective in the last couple of years. Has it exceeded your expectations?
Well, we have to consider several things. First of all, when it comes to the reforms that are being implemented right now in Cuba, we have to consider what was going on before Fidel Castro fell ill in 2006, meaning the Cuban economy was experiencing a process of recentralization, at least between 2003 and 2006. So Raul Castro stopped that process and actually began to move the Cuban economy in a completely different direction. So if we consider that as a point of departure, the reforms that are being implemented right now are quite significant. Obviously, if we compare Cuba with other Latin American countries, in other countries across the world, then might not be that significant.
Yes, I mean, I think what you need, if you look back at the beginning of the revolution in 1959, they nationalized all of the major industries and farms. It's what caused the US trade embargo, which continues to this day. It was 10 years later that Fidel Castro then nationalized everybody and everything, right down to the shoeshine boy. And it's that side that Raul Castro has said was wrong, it was a mistake. They're going to allow small private businesses within, they say, the socialist system, but they're not going to give up control of the major industries.
You know, one of the things that he's asking you is about some of the issues that they've faced, the challenges that Cuba's economy has faced. Do you think that the government needs to do more to overcome those challenges in light of especially what Michael's talking about here in the short term? You've got a decline in what's happening in Europe. You've got a strained relationship outside of Cuba as well. I mean, are things as good as it seems to be?
Well, I wouldn't go as far as saying that they're good. Certainly, they are better than they used to be. When it comes to reform, I think Michael is right in the sense that self-employed workers have been promoted actively. Now you have a new group of cooperatives that are outside of agriculture that are just being launched. So that is also a very important aspect of the reform. But I would say the biggest challenge in Cuba right now is not really on the street, but at the level of central planning on the part of the government, meaning what the Cuban government can do in order to reform the state enterprises, which is really the bulk of the Cuban economy. So I would say that is the biggest challenge.
Let me follow up on that. Do you think the administration there is happy with the current progress, or perhaps do they feel like they need to go a little faster, or is this just about right?
You mean the administration of Cuba?
Yes.
I would say they're happy with what has happened so far. In any case, they have been quite straightforward in saying that what has happened so far is really the easiest part of the reform process. Now it comes the most difficult part, which is to reform the state sector. That is really the key of the future of the reform process in Cuba. And I would say another thing that it really has to be reconciled is this contradiction between central planning and the role of the market. If you remember a few years ago in 2011, in April 2011, the 6th Congress of the Communist Party said in their own guidelines that central planning will continue to dominate the economy, but at the same time, the market will receive a greater role in the economy. And that is really the biggest dilemma, how to make the two reconcile.
I wonder, as an economist outside of Cuba, how you see the issue of foreign investment. Cuba's about to open this new large deep water superport at Mariel with a free trade zone around it, and it is looking for people to invest and build manufacturing there. From your perspective overseas, do you see conditions here that might attract foreign investors?
Certainly, the giant container terminal at Mariel is a very important issue, and especially the special development zone that is going to be launched early next year. Still, the U.S. market is not accessible to companies that decide to invest in Cuba. There might be a limitation, but there is no doubt that it might attract significant foreign investment, and especially more higher tech manufacturing activities. Cuba had experienced free trade zones in the late 90s, but it was not very successful. One thing that I have to say about foreign investment that many people sort of overlook is the fact that in Cuba, the foreign investment legislation is quite liberal, meaning all sectors of the Cuban economy are practically open to foreign investment, and not only that, open to 100% wholly owned investment. So far, foreign investment has been more a result of the selectiveness of the Cuban government in accepting or not accepting certain companies rather than the legislation.
Paulo, Michael had the question on the ports, still related to water. I want to talk about the beaches there. He was talking earlier in his piece that, you know, they get roughly 3 million visitors a year. It comes out to be $3 billion a year in terms of revenue for Cuba. How important is that, and how fast can they grow that, guys? Because I imagine they want to grow tourism.
Tourism has grown exponentially since the early 90s. There is no doubt that it's reaching a plateau, meaning that, yes, they are building more hotels, but so far the strategy of the government has been an expansive strategy rather than trying to increase the efficiency of the tourism industry. We have to keep things into perspective. Cuba is less efficient than many other countries in the Caribbean, even though it's the third largest recipient of tourists after Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. So there's a lot to be done in the tourism industry to not only to increase the amount of tourists that come to Cuba every year, but also to make the overall industry more efficient. That is the biggest challenge of the sector.
All right, Paulo Spadoni from the University of Florida, thank you very much from Gainesville. And of course, Michael Voss, thank you as well. Gentlemen, have a great day, and thank you for the conversation on Cuba.